Hi again, everyone. I know it's just before lunch. It's always the worst spot. All right. So I was asked to talk about principles of good design projects. And the truth is there are many different types of design projects. So it feels a little bit like too specific of a task for the state of ambiguity that we're in. So I thought instead maybe what I would do is share an example of a project or initiative that happened over the course of a decade with multiple stakeholders coming together to make systemic change. That's the kind of work that we're talking about. And I'm going to share it not in the context of India and not in the context of some of the conversations we're having today, so that we can listen for the principles of a good project rather than listening for the project itself. Does that make sense? So I think that they're going to be handing out some sheets, if you've gotten it. Yeah. What I'd love for you to do is, in the next few minutes, as I'm going through this case study, capture what you hear about what made this good, what made the project good, what were some of the principles that might have made it work. And then I'm going to share, at the end, some starter thoughts, and then what we can do is kind of build on that with the notes that you've taken, okay? So here we go. I'm going to introduce you to my friend Talia. I worked with Talia for over the course of a decade, many years ago now, but we're still close friends and still collaborators. Back in 2011, how long ago was that now? 13 years ago? Yeah. 13 years ago, this guy, Barack Obama, made a call to the nation in his State of the Union address. And he said, I would like for us to have 100,000 more STEM teachers in our classrooms in the next 10 years. Do you guys know what STEM is? Science, technology, engineering, and math. So they had done a big analysis. They felt like there weren't enough STEM teachers in the schools. And he made a call in his State of the Union address. And it just goes out there. There's no plan. There's nothing to, he just hopes that it happens. So Talia called me up one day and said, you know, Barack just made that, we're on close terms, so we can call him that. Barack just made that call for having 100,000 more STEM teachers in our classrooms over the next 10 years. There was no plan. There's no plan of action. What if we actually designed a response to that call to action? I said, what a great provocation. So we began with the question, how can we design a response to a national call to action? And what we decided to do was we put together a group not dissimilar to this. We had about 30 organizations that were involved with STEM teachers. And we brought everybody together to explore this question of how do we have 100,000 more well-prepared STEM teachers in our classrooms. And what we did in that convening was we envisioned a future we all wished for. We said, all right, it's 10 years out and we're successful. What does the world look like? What did we do to get there? And then we asked each organization to kind of think backwards from that and say, if that happens to be true, what did each of us contribute to that? So the question wasn't what new thing we can do, it's what are you already doing that can actually help make this movement happen? Over time, and I'm going to tell you now what happened over the following 10 years, over time, we clarified what types of organizations were needed in order to advance this movement. And I'm just going to tell you here, just so you can track with me over time, is like we needed organizations who were increasing the supply of teachers. We needed organizations who were increasing the demand of teachers, so the people hiring teachers. And we realized we needed people to help build the movement, communicators. We also kept these organizations involved by creating incentives to keep them inspired, that this movement was worth it. Not just come to a workshop and leave, come to a workshop and then stay. So the first thing we said to everyone is, if you're going to make a commitment to join us in this movement, we're going to get a meeting with the Secretary of Education, and we're going to invite you to join us to share with him the work we're doing. So 6 months later, we set up a meeting with Arne Duncan, who was the Secretary of Education at the time, and we came to him and said, hey, President Obama made this call to action in the State of the Union address. We just want you to know we're going to answer that call, and here's how we're starting to approach it. And Arnie Duncan was like, this is the best meeting I've ever had. You're not asking me for anything. You're not telling me what I'm doing wrong, but you're literally saying, I'm going to help you with a priority of the country. I love you guys. And by the way, all those organizations totally wanted to sit in front of Arnie Duncan, so it was like a great inspiration to keep them motivated. So over time, we actually built from an informal team across multiple organizations, kind of holding the effort, into a formal organization that is called 100K in 10, that then was holding the intention, holding the commitment, and enlisting more and more organizations to join up. A lot of you are probably doing work like this, so I'm not necessarily saying anything new, just trying to bring all together some of these ideas. And 100K in 10 not just held the intention, but also told stories about what was happening. They did things like raised funds in order to provide grants or support to the organizations, or to do research themselves around things that could help advance everybody else's work. Part of the work that they did then as an organization was they found out what are the problems that every organization is facing and what might be the root causes of some of those problems, so that we started to look at what solutions might we create to help everybody be able to do their work better. And then we had annual convenings of all of the organizations to kind of review what had been happening, learn from each other, kind of reinforce the movement, do technical assistance where people needed. And you can see how much the group is changing, right? Remember that initial kind of scrappy 30 organizations together? Now we've got hundreds of organizations that are part of it. We had a third party come in and regularly do assessment to help us measure the kind of impact that we were having in the world, and how we would talk about that, and how we would tune our efforts as a result of the impact that was growing. And I am kind of proud to say we did achieve the goal over the course of a decade that was verified by multiple organizations, multiple third-party organizations. And what's so cool for 100K in 10 is they could say that. They could say, although he wasn't in office anymore, hey, President Obama, we fulfilled on the request that you made. And it happened through our version of grassroots. So, oh, last point. Sorry, one more. I forgot I added this. But we also kept key leaders informed of the work that was happening so that they could celebrate it against their priorities. And so when we achieved the goal, former President Clinton acknowledged it. Like, he celebrated the work of 100K in 10 because it reinforced some of the things that he cared about. And while, you may not need the president or the prime minister reinforcing stuff, having authorities who come in and validate the work that's happening can be incredibly motivating. So what are some principles that we can pull from this or the other work that was shared throughout these 2 days about what a good project, what a good initiative looks like when it's across multiple organizations? I'm giving you a starter list here based on my memories of this particular experience, but of course you've got your own experiences. But I'll just read these. First thing, we started with an opportunity. It's an open question, we didn't know how to solve it, but we aligned around shared intent. We brought multiple organizations together, and we said, what do we need to achieve, and how do we need to achieve that together? We created a picture of the future. We aligned commitments from multiple organizations through the work the organizations were already doing, and honestly, I think this is like one of the most important points ever. Nobody has capacity to do more or additional work. People they want to participate, but they need to do it in the realm of reason. So if you're bringing multiple organizations together, you have to find a way to have the work they're already doing matter, contribute to what the overall goal is. We had a core team that was responsible for holding that North Star, the intent for the reason to come together, but they also then were constantly designing how that community came together for a shared purpose. We created incentives to motivate progress, and in this case, it was a lot about those leaders that I was showing you. And we regularly came together to learn, deepen commitment, and celebrate progress. And of course, what's not on here is the patience to see that through over the course of a decade. So I'm going to call this a starter list of principles for you around what a good initiative design might be for the kind of local to systemic change that you're talking about that probably involves a lot of multiple organizations coming together around a big question. And I'm going to ask you to just kind of reflect for a moment, like, is there something missing from here? Is there something that you wrote down that you feel like wasn't captured here, or you heard throughout yesterday or today so far that you feel might be a principle of a good initiative that you want to share with the room? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Building championship within and outside the project. I was quite struck by what you did with the education person right at the outset, and then created a champion out of them so that they can, even without you, find spaces to talk about your work and champion the work, which I think also goes quite far.
And that becomes motivating to the community that's working on it. And the key there was also we weren't asking more of them. You see my pattern here is like you kind of just get everybody to feel excited without having to do more, with having to come to where you are. They kind of get to stay where they are. Great. What else? Anything else? Yeah, the back. I don't know if there's a way someone can capture some of these additional principles. I can't really up here. But maybe champion. You have a sheet, yeah. All right, if you don't mind capturing, yeah. Okay, perfect.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Right. Just wanted to add, maybe if you want to build like a theory of change, because a decade is a long period of time, right? So you break it into a log frame or, digestible bits so that people can see where they're going and how each input or activity sort of leading to the shared goal or vision you've set out for right in the beginning.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. I like that a lot. A lot of what that does also is it lets people exit and it lets people enter, and you have continuity because you know what you're entering into. Great. Any other last thoughts about principles for good project design? Yeah.
I think it's definitely there somewhere. It's the communication.
Sorry, I want everyone to hear you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure it's there somewhere in all of these 5 points. It's communication, right? Constantly letting the team know where they are going towards the North Star and making that as an inspirational piece, and also learning from whatever has happened and changing course and correcting courses, etc. Yeah.
Thank you. I totally agree. Communication, communication, communication. All right, do we have time? How are we doing on time? Good? Oh, all right. In the back and then in the middle.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Sure.
So
Always.
when you talk about the organizations that you organized together to solve this goal, what were the kinds of organization outside the field of education that you took into consideration?
Yeah. In this particular case, there were a ton of nonprofit organizations that were training teachers, or they were math specialists rather than they weren't necessarily training teachers, but they were like the National Math Organization that was helping with educational standards. So there were mostly education type of organizations, but except for the category of building and sustaining the movement, there was a lot of design companies or people with advertising and communication expertise. We also brought in people with, it's called technical assistance. It's sort of figuring out what does every organization need. There was a lot that people needed around communication training, even being able to talk about what they were doing. So types of organizations that mostly were helping make all of that work happen.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think you in the middle, and then, sorry, the mic's coming forward, so yeah, go ahead.
I mean, something that registered in the or actually all the talks, is how people who get things done through projects get them done because they choose to work with people who are willing to work with them.
Yeah. Yeah, a willingness. It's a great reminder. There needs to be a willingness and interest in collaborating, right? Yeah. And also trust. Yeah, and I think a lot of these convenings where you come together is a great way to build that trust, where you learn from each other. You're not seeing yourselves as separate. Yeah. Owning the project, yeah. Tell me more about what you mean by that. I'll just repeat instead of getting, the mic is coming, okay, good.
If all the stakeholders own the project, means they own it.
Yes.
But the commitment is more towards the success of the project.
Yeah. Each of the stakeholders needs to feel committed to the work that they're doing in service of the whole, and some entity needs to hold how it all comes together. And I think a lot of times we think that will just happen, but it doesn't. That's really hard work to do. That's different work than doing the work of the project. It's making the work of the project team, right? So maybe don't forget that if you're thinking about initiatives that you're designing. Seems like we haven't had a bell yet.
I have a last point. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just aligning commitments, but also aligning timelines and values. So
Nice,
there are
yeah.
different stakeholders and organizations. So we're also talking about academic partnerships. So just like a trigger for the next activity is aligning timelines of academic institutions with corporate institutions or community-oriented institutions.
Yeah, it's a really great point. In a way, on this one, we had a timeline built in because we had this 10-year goal. We had to build toward a 10-year goal. And we had organizations that were in similar kind of workflows. But your point is very well taken. In some other efforts I've been a part of, it's very hard to align the academic timing, the academic cycles with the corporate cycles. So yeah, that's a great point. I saw a bunch of hands go up, actually. Okay. And people have microphones. If you've got a microphone, go ahead and then pass it to the next person.
Yeah, so for me, it was about the power of ritual.
Yeah.
I think there were repeated points being made about how do you keep the goal in sight when it's so large and so complex and there's so many moving parts and people with different levels of commitment. And hence, I think the power of ritual that brings all of these people together. It could be an invocation ritual. It could be reaffirming the goals. It could be just something simple that you do over and over again that keeps this intangible, invisible, really large, hairy goal alive for you and the spirit with which you want to approach it.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's my take on it. It could be something as simple as, every time you meet, you say something, or you have a cup of tea together, or you draw something on a board, or you take a picture and you put it up on the wall that shows progress. But that ritual can have meaning and power that connects you to your larger goal and connects you to each other.
I love that, especially because people are busy with so many other things, that ritual is a reminder of what they're coming back into. All right, does that...
Sandy,
the two things I've discovered is you have to let people feel that they're being heard.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to stop people being heard because the second principle is you have to
you
let
have to
them
feed
know when the
people.
lunch is going to happen. So we're having two conflicts.
I hope that's helpful for the setup for this afternoon.
It's fantastic.
Okay, great.
Sandy,
Thank you, everybody.